All right, today we're diving into Summit Therapeutics, and folks, this is a fascinating story. You've got a company with genuinely strong clinical data for a new cancer drug, but the market's reaction was a massive sell-off. So what's going on? Well, it all comes down to a high-stakes game of chicken with the FDA that has investors totally spooked. Let's break down the bull case, the bear case, and what could happen next.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with a quick look at the numbers, then unpack why management is so confident versus why the market is so scared. After that, we'll look at the key dates to watch, and we'll wrap it all up with our take on the next call.
Okay, first up, the earnings snapshot. Before we get into all the drama, let's just get grounded in the actual financials. So, on the books, Summit posted a GAAP loss of 31 cents per share. Now, if you strip out things like stock-based compensation, you get the non-GAAP number, which looks a little better, at a loss of 13 cents. And of course, as a biotech that doesn't have a product on the market yet, there was no revenue. Pretty standard stuff here.
But for a company in this position, this is the number that really matters. Cash. Summit ended the quarter with $238.6 million. You have to think of this as their war chest. It's the fuel in the tank for this fight they're picking with the FDA.
And here's the catch. That cash isn't going to last forever. Their non-GAAP operating expenses were over $100 million in just this one quarter. So you do the math. That cash gives them a runway, but the clock is definitely ticking. It puts this immense pressure on management to get their strategy right, and to get it right, well, now.
All right, let's move on to the bull case. Because despite that nervous market reaction, management came out absolutely swinging on their earnings call. Let's dig into why they're so confident.
This quote really sums up their entire attitude. Management is basically saying, look, we believe the complete data package, how well it works, how safe it is, all of it demonstrates the patients can benefit. They are forcefully arguing that this whole picture is strong enough to file for approval right now, even though they know the FDA has some serious concerns.
And this number right here, this is the core of their whole argument, 48%. Their key study showed their drug cut the risk of disease progression or death by nearly half compared to chemotherapy. In the world of cancer treatment, that is a huge, huge deal, a real head-turner.
And they are not just sitting on their hands. No way. They're aggressively pushing forward, starting a whole new phase 3 trial in colorectal cancer, planning even more studies for next year, and they're even teaming up with other companies like Revolution Medicines. This signals that they have long-term confidence that goes way beyond this one regulatory decision. But, okay, even with that pretty compelling bull case, the market sent a very clear, very negative message. So let's flip the coin and unpack all the skepticism that just crushed the stock.
And this really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's what every investor was scratching their head about after the call. The data looks good, so what's the problem?
Well, here's how the market answered that question. The stock tanked, dropping over 4.5% on the news. Investors heard management's confidence, and they decided, nope, we're selling. And I want to be clear, this wasn't some quiet little drift downward. The trading volume absolutely exploded. It was more than 4 times the normal 30-day average. We're talking about almost 9.4 million shares changing hands. When you see that kind of volume on a big down day, it tells you one thing. The big money, the institutions, were heading for the exits. And here it is, the absolute heart of the bear case. It all comes down to these 2 words. Overall survival, or OS. This is the FDA's gold standard. It answers the single most important question. Does this drug actually help patients live longer? You see, the FDA is incredibly strict about this because some drugs in the past have been shown to shrink tumors without actually extending anyone's life. The agency has been very clear with Summit that they need to see this data. But Summit doesn't have it yet. Management wants to push for approval anyway, and the market is betting that's a fight they just can't win. So with the battle lines clearly drawn, you've got a confident company on one side and a deeply skeptical market on the other. These are the key events coming up that are going to decide who was right all along.
You're going to want to circle these dates on your calendar. There are 3 big ones. First, later this quarter they'll submit their application, the BLA. That's the official please approve our drug package. Second, in the first quarter of 2026, we find out if the FDA will even agree to review it. That's a massive hurdle. And third, way out in the second half of 2026, we'll get more data from a different study that could potentially change this whole story.
So, let's put all these pieces together. It's time for our take, our prediction, and rating for Summit Therapeutics.
For next quarter, honestly, expect more of the same, a high cash burn rate with 0 product revenue.
For the stock price, we're forecasting a lot of volatility and probably continued downward pressure until the FDA gives some kind of clear signal on that application. For these reasons, we're assigning an equity rating of underperform. The regulatory risk from that missing overall survival data just casts too big of a shadow over the positive data they do have right now.
And that brings us to the trade idea. Now, this is a high-risk play for sure, but a short position here is a direct bet against management's entire strategy. You'd be betting that the FDA holds firm on its requirement for OS data, which would likely lead to a rejection or a major delay, and send the stock sharply lower.
And finally, before we wrap up, just a very crucial reminder.
Remember, this analysis is purely for informational purposes. It is not financial advice. The question for every investor here is simple. Is Summit's management being bold and visionary, or are they picking a fight with the FDA that they are just destined to lose? I guess we'll all find out in early 2026.